Today we are making sourdough cinnamon rolls. These cinnamon rolls are incredibly soft and so fluffy, and the entire thing tastes like the best part, the center, of course. They're filled with plenty of dark brown sugar and warm cinnamon that will make your kitchen smell heavenly. Once they're pulled out of the oven, top them while they're still warm with a luscious cream cheese frosting. The entire family is surely going to love this recipe, and I hope that they become a staple in your family, especially around the holidays. The sweetness from the cinnamon sugar filling with the tanginess from the cream cheese frosting and sourdough, it's a match made in heaven. So grab your sourdough starter and let's get started. Alright, first things first, make sure you grab your kitchen scale for the most precise measurement. I'm going to be using my stand mixer in order to create my cinnamon roll dough, but you can do this by hand. First up, we're going to add 100 grams or a heaping third cup of active sourdough starter. Remember, you want to see that your starter has at least doubled in size, it's bubbly throughout, on top as well, and the top starts to look like craters, right? It's just starting to fall. That's when you know it's ready to use. So again, 100 grams or a heaping third cup of active starter. And one over. We'll call that good. To that, we're going to add 30 grams or 2 tablespoons of dark brown sugar. You can substitute with a light brown sugar. However, I love the rich caramelized flavor that the dark brown sugar brings to this dough. Make sure you mix it up so it doesn't have all those clumps. Brown sugar is known for that. The recipe now calls for some warm milk. If you don't have one, I highly recommend you getting an instant thermometer. This is super helpful in my kitchen, especially when I'm adding warm ingredients to something that uses active starter, because you don't want your liquids to be too hot. If it is too hot, you can run into the chance of killing your sourdough starter, which will prevent your dough from rising. So you don't want it to go anywhere hotter than 120 degrees Fahrenheit. I typically like to aim for around 100 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit, just to be safe. So let's add 175 grams or 3/4 of a cup of warm milk. We're going to pop this onto our stand mixer and give it a mix on low until everything is incorporated. Now we're going to add 57 grams or 4 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter. Then add 5 grams or 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And 1 large room temperature egg. You can always crack your egg in a separate bowl just to be sure there's no shells. We're going to put this back on the stand mixer, give it a little mix on low until everything is smooth. The final ingredient for our cinnamon roll dough is our flour. I call for bread flour. You can, however, use all-purpose flour. However, I love using bread flour because it has a higher percentage of protein in it, so you're going to get a fluffier, chewier bite. My recipe calls for 370 grams of bread flour or 2.5 cups plus 2 tablespoons. I'm going to add a 1/2 cup or 70 grams of bread flour at a time while my mixer is mixing on medium. I'm going to stop periodically to scrape the sides and to feel the dough to make sure I know exactly when enough flour is added. Before we add the flour, make sure you switch to a dough hook. Stop to scrape the sides each time you add more flour, just to make sure you're getting all that flour into the party. So this is 4. And remember, start mixing on low and then switch to medium once the flour starts to get into that dough. Otherwise, you're gonna have flour everywhere. Speaking from experience. So it's starting to look a little bit more like a dough. But as you can see, it's sticking heavily onto the sides of the bowl, so we know we definitely need more flour. Alright, so now we're seeing that our dough is no longer sticking to the sides of the bowl, which is a great sign. And the final test is to touch the dough. We want our cinnamon roll dough to be tacky to the touch, but not sticky. So if you notice, it's still leaving a little bit of dough on my dry fingers, and I'm not wanting that. So I've only added 350 grams of bread flour so far, so I'm just gonna add a touch more, and then hopefully it will be set. 20 more grams. Alright, let's give it a little check here. And just like that, that's perfect, okay? So again, tacky to the touch, but no dough is being left on my finger. That is your sign that your cinnamon roll dough is perfect. We're gonna let our stand mixer knead our dough for 5 more minutes on medium speed. If you wanna knead by hand, you can do that as well. All right, we're now gonna transfer our dough into a clean bowl. I'm just gonna brush it lightly with some coconut oil to help the dough from sticking here. I love using a straight edge container, especially when it comes to sourdough and your bulk fermentation. This is such a great tool to have, especially if you're a beginner, because the straight edges really help you see how much your dough has risen, where in a bowl it's really hard to identify. So definitely recommend it. Make sure none is left behind. Just make it into a nice little dough ball here. Ain't she pretty? We're gonna leave our dough to bulk ferment until it has doubled in size. In my 70-degree kitchen, this can take about 6 to 7 hours. If your kitchen is warmer, it's gonna rise faster. If your kitchen is cooler, then it's gonna take longer. We're just gonna cover our dough. I have this reusable beeswax cover. Use a reusable shower cap, plastic wrap, just something that will trap the moisture so that your dough doesn't dry out. On to the shipping. I prepped this dough last night and stored it in the fridge for a cold proof. This is a great option for anyone who maybe doesn't have enough time to finish shaping and baking your sourdough cinnamon rolls. You can always just pop it in the fridge and continue on the next morning. We're gonna lightly dust our work surface with some flour. We're gonna remove our dough from our container. Make sure to get every last bit. Now we're going to roll out our dough to be 16 inches by 12 inches. I just love this dough. It is so easy to work with. It's soft, it's pliable. It's just a dream, and it bakes up even better. I love using my Barlow & Co. rolling pin. It's a French style rolling pin, and so a benefit of that is just the weight is evenly distributed and it's just really easy to use. Plus, it's beautiful craftsmanship. So if you're looking for a sweet gift for a fellow baker or for yourself, be sure to check them out. One thing you might notice is if you do pull out your dough from the fridge, it might just need a little bit more work because the dough is cold to stretch. If the dough is at room temperature, it'll be a little bit easier. Nothing a little elbow grease can't fix. Perfect. Now for the filling. We're gonna need 57 grams or 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. You don't just want room temperature butter, you want your butter to be super soft for the easiest spreading. So I like to just take little dabs and spread it evenly around the dough. If you notice that your butter is still a little firm, pop it in the microwave for just a few seconds. Now you're going to use an offset spatula and spread the butter evenly around the entire surface of the dough. What a beautiful sight! She's looking beautiful. Now for the cinnamon sugar mixture. We're gonna add 150 grams or 2/3 cup of dark brown sugar. Like I said before, you can substitute with light brown sugar instead. And now the star ingredient, 12 grams or 5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. Give her a little mix. And just double check that there's no lumps in your brown sugar as well. All right, let's sprinkle our cinnamon sugar mixture over our dough. Then I just like to spread it around with my hand, make sure everything is nice and even. Kind of just pat that cinnamon sugar into the dough as well, all the way to the very edge. You can roll up your sourdough cinnamon roll dough the traditional way, starting closest to you until it's one long shape. However, I'm going to share with you an easier way, and all you need is a pizza cutter or a sharp knife. When you measure your dough out to 16 inches, that's going to be roughly 1 3/4. Once you have your 9 rolls measured out, take your pizza cutter and you're going to just cut a straight line until the opposite side. Starting on the side closest to you, you're going to lift up your dough and start to roll nice and tightly. Just like that. This is why I love using a pizza cutter, because you get the most perfect cinnamon swirl every single time. We're going to place those into a greased 9x9, or you could use a 2-quart baking dish, your choice. And continue on with the rest of them. I like to just stretch the ends and then pinch them into the dough so it stays nice. Beautiful. You're going to want to leave about like a 1/2 inch in between each cinnamon roll, just enough space for them to rise. Look at that. Aren't they darling? Now I understand with cinnamon rolls, they usually want to be enjoyed right away in the morning. So if you're not ready to bake quite yet, after shaping your sourdough cinnamon rolls, you can cover them with plastic wrap or a reusable sour cap and store them in the fridge overnight. Early in the morning, you're going to pull this out and you're going to place them into your oven with just the light on. This will create a nice and toasty spot for your sourdough cinnamon rolls to rise. Once they have proofed and they're double in size, they look nice and puffy, then they're ready to bake. Typically, this could take about 3 to 4 hours because the dough is cold. If you are going to bake these on the same day, you're going to cover them up with some plastic wrap and leave them in a warm spot. In my 70-degree kitchen, this takes about 2 to 4 hours, so once they're nice and puffy and doubled in size, they're ready to bake. Alright, so I prepared these the day before and I let them rise at room temperature, and look at these beauties. So as you can see, they puffed up, they look ready to bake. You might be concerned because you see a lot of liquid on the bottom of my baking pan. This is totally normal. Sugar extracts moisture from the dough, so it may just leave a little puddle. When it's baking, it's gonna soak right back up and be delicious. Now, I preheated my oven to 350 degrees, and just before you pop these cinnamon rolls into the hot oven, we're going to pour a little bit of warmed heavy cream. If you've never done this before, you are missing out. The high fat from the heavy cream adds just the perfect amount of moisture to our cinnamon rolls, keeping them nice and soft, making the whole cinnamon roll taste like the best part, the center. So pour 220 grams or a 1/2 cup of warmed heavy cream. We're going to bake these at 350 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes, or the internal temp is 190 degrees. While our sourdough cinnamon rolls are baking, let's prepare the cream cheese frosting. First, you're gonna add 55 grams or 2 ounces of room temperature cream cheese. Then we're gonna need 28 grams or 2 tablespoons of room temperature butter. You can use salted or unsalted. With a hand mixer, let's blend these up until they're nice and smooth. To that, we're gonna add 15 grams or 1 tablespoon of heavy cream. And finally, 90 grams or 3/4 cup of powdered sugar. Mix on low until nice and smooth. Perfect. Let your cinnamon rolls cool down slightly, about 5 minutes before topping them with our cream cheese frosting. I like to place just a little bit of the cream cheese frosting on top and allow it to melt slightly for easy spreading. Then it gets in all those cracks and crevices. And just like that, you've made the most delicious sourdough cinnamon rolls. These pillowy soft cinnamon rolls are filled with the sweet brown sugar and cinnamon mixture and topped with the luscious cream cheese frosting. One of my favorite childhood memories was when my mom would pull out those Pillsbury cinnamon rolls and bake them up for our special occasions. But let's be honest, those have nothing on these sourdough cinnamon rolls made from scratch. Thanks to the heavy cream poured just on top before baking, each bite is as good as the last. There's nothing better than enjoying a warm sourdough cinnamon roll freshly out of the oven with a hot cup of coffee. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!